Anicet Dybantsa Jr. was just drafted first overall by the Wizards, but now there are reports he wants out before even playing a game. Considering everything that happened before the draft, some fans aren't completely surprised. So why is the #1 pick already being linked to a trade? Let me break it down. Commissioner Adam Silver took the podium in Brooklyn, New York, to announce that BYU's freshman star Anicet Dybantsa was officially the first overall pick in the 2026 NBA draft. The name that rang out across the Barclays Center wasn't just AJ. The new Wizard told reporters afterwards, "You guys can still call me AJ. I wanted Adam to call me Anicet because I also wanted to honor my dad. His name is Anicet Dybantsa Sr. and he goes by Ace." That moment, the full name, the tribute, the weight of it, set the tone for an entire evening that was going to be anything but ordinary. The room in Brooklyn felt charged the moment it happened. This wasn't a surprise pick in the traditional sense. Analysts had been building to this for months. But hearing it confirmed, hearing Anicet Dybantsa Jr. echo through that arena, made something real that had only lived in mock drafts and speculation boards. Washington had its man. The question the league immediately started asking wasn't whether Dybantsa was good enough. Nobody doubted that. The question was whether Washington was the right place for him, whether the Wizards' plan actually made sense, whether this whole thing was going to hold together. And inside that question lived a much bigger conversation, one that the Wizards' front office, the players already on the roster, and Dybantsa's own camp were all quietly aware of before a single game had been played. After losing nearly 200 games over the past 3 seasons, the Washington Wizards ushered in a new era by drafting BYU freshman forward Anicet Dybantsa with the #1 pick in the NBA draft Tuesday night. That number, nearly 200 losses, sits in the background of every conversation about what Washington is building. You don't accumulate that kind of wreckage by accident. It's the byproduct of a full institutional teardown, a conscious, deliberate tank. And now they're supposed to flip the switch. The Wizards have been in rebuild mode long enough that an entire generation of DC basketball fans has basically never seen their team in the playoffs. The Wizards haven't made the playoffs since 2021 and have not been past the second round since 1979, when the then Bullets lost in the NBA Finals. That's not a dry spell. That's a generational absence from relevance. And the franchise has tried to accelerate the recovery in a way that creates its own set of complications. Complications that now land squarely at the feet of a 19-year-old from Brockton, Massachusetts. Here's where it gets interesting. The Wizards accelerated their rebuild by trading for Trae Young and Anthony Davis last season to enhance a young core of Alex Sarr, Keyshawn George, Trey Johnson, Will Riley, Bub Carrington, and Bilal Coulibaly. Young intends to sign a 4-year deal worth approximately $212 million to stay with the Wizards. So before Dybantsa played a single minute in the NBA, Washington had already handed out a near-max contract to a veteran star and acquired another superstar in Davis. The roster was being built around the idea of winning now, at least winning soon, even as they prepare to install their freshest, youngest franchise cornerstone. With Dybantsa officially joining the team, he will join a core in Washington. That includes Trae Young, Anthony Davis, Alex Sarr, Keyshawn George, Trey Johnson, Bilal Coulibaly, Bub Carrington, and Will Riley. Count those names. That's a lot of players who all want the ball, all need touches, all have their own developmental arcs and contractual expectations. And now you're dropping the consensus best prospect in years into the middle of that ecosystem and asking everyone to share. The conversation about fit started the second the pick was announced. People started doing the math. Where does a 19-year-old, regardless of how gifted he is, actually slot in when the veteran around him just signed for $212 million? Those veteran signings fill the roles of star players at guard and center, leaving room for Dybantsa to take command from the forward slot. That's the organizational theory. But theories and locker rooms are two different things. And Dybantsa didn't come this far to be a supporting player. Former Wizard John Wall made his feelings about this pick crystal clear before draft night even arrived. You get a guy like Anicet Dybantsa. He is like a young Tracy McGrady to me. Wall told ESPN when he represented the Wizards at the draft lottery. Tracy McGrady, a player who by his mid-20s was one of the most unstoppable offensive forces the league had ever seen. A player who needed the ball, commanded the offense, and critically, needed to be the guy on whatever team he played for. That's who Wall was comparing Washington's new franchise centerpiece to. Not a role player, not a complimentary piece. The guy, Dybantsa said, being the #1 pick meant a lot to him, and that he definitely wanted to be a staple to be no one in the NBA draft. and be in the same conversation with LeBron James and Cooper Flagg, Allen Iverson, and guys like that. He wasn't talking like a player content to come off the bench and learn the system. He was talking like a man who'd been building toward a destiny, and who believed that destiny was only just beginning to unfold. And the Wizards knew exactly who they were getting. Dybantsa told reporters directly what he brings, and what the team asked of him. "I bring versatility," he said. "I can just fit in as like an off-ball guy that can score in different ways. Score in transition, score off the catch, score off the dribble." But also they challenged me when they talked to me. "If we pick you, we want you to play defense 94 feet and pick up." So I definitely bring that too. That's a player being asked to do everything. All-court defense, versatile offense, fit alongside stars. That's a lot to place on a teenager's shoulders in year one. Bayou head coach Kevin Young, who knows Dybantsa as well as anyone, said something that cut through all the noise. He reminds me a lot of, it's a combination of that serious-minded focus that I saw in Devin Booker and the work ethic that I saw in Kevin Durant. He has that type of maturity. He carries himself like he has already been a pro for 10 years. That kind of praise from a coach who spent a decade in the NBA is not something you take lightly, but it also raises the stakes. Because if he carries himself like a 10-year pro, he's also going to notice very quickly when the situation around him isn't built to maximize what he does. About the time AJ was celebrating with family and friends in New York after being picked no one by the Wizards, Bayou assistant coach Brandon Dunson shared a story on social media. A year before draft night, when Igor Demin, Dybantsa's BYU teammate, went in the top 10 of the previous draft, AJ was with the USA team at the U19 World Cup. It was 3:04 a.m. in Switzerland, and according to Dunson, all he could talk about was how the draft motivated him to be no bun. "A year later, here we are," Dunson said. That's the through line of this entire story. Dybantsa doesn't do anything by accident. He doesn't wander into situations. He engineers them. He reclassified. He chose BYU, a school that barely registered on the national basketball map, over blue bloods like Kansas and North Carolina, because he made a calculated decision about what environment would best prepare him for the NBA. Every move has been intentional. Every step has been toward a singular goal. So when you start layering the Wizards roster construction on top of this player's mentality and track record, the tension becomes unmistakable. The question isn't whether AJ Dybantsa is good enough for Washington. The question, the one hanging over this entire story, is whether Washington is good enough for AJ Dybantsa. And to understand why that question has so much weight, you have to go all the way back to the beginning, to Brockton, to a kid who knew exactly who he was going to be before he could legally drive a car. Dybantsa was born on January 29, 2007 in Boston, Massachusetts, and grew up in Brockton. He is of Congolese and Jamaican origin. His father, Ace, was born in the Republic of Congo and moved to Grigny, France, and his mother, Chelsea, is from Jamaica. 2 continents, 2 cultures, 1 basketball-obsessed household, and a city in southeastern Massachusetts that doesn't produce many no-one NBA picks. In fact, Brockton doesn't produce many anything when it comes to professional sports at the top tier. It's a working-class city, a grind city, the kind of place where people don't hand you anything. That's actually the most important context for understanding why Dybantsa is who he is. He didn't grow up in a hotbed. He didn't have every resource at his disposal from day one. He said on draft night, "I'm Brockton bred, 508. I do everything for them. I like helping my community and giving kids hope." There are a lot of kids that play basketball out there and think that they can't make it. But once they see me, they might have some hope. He rose fast. He was named the Massachusetts Boys Basketball Gatorade Player of the Year, following his freshman season after averaging 19 points, 9 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 blocks per game. His freshman year of high school, not his sophomore year, not his junior year, his freshman year. Before most kids have figured out their jumper, Dybantsa was already drawing comparisons to players who'd go in the top 5 of NBA drafts. That kind of self-knowledge at that age is extraordinarily rare. His first ever NBA workout was with Kevin Durant. When he got to the gym, Durant was in the back stretching. He was far away, so Dybantsa didn't know who it was at first. Then Durant came up and said, "What's good?" And Dybantsa dapped him up. I don't really get starstruck, but in my mind, I'm like, I couldn't believe it. That's KD. Durant asked if he wanted to get some shots up. That's the picture. a teenager barely old enough to drive, shooting around with one of the greatest scorers in NBA history. And already the relationship that would later influence one of the most consequential recruiting decisions of the modern era was being formed. KD would become more than just a workout buddy. Dybantsa knows Durant, whom he idolized in high school, as a mentor and friend. During his decision process, the rising star called Durant to ask the two-time NBA champion about his experience working with Kevin Young in Phoenix, before Dybantsa took an official visit to BYU. Think about that chain of events. A teenager, at the center of one of the most hotly contested recruiting battles in college basketball history, calls Kevin Durant for advice, and Durant's endorsement of Kevin Young helped tip the scales. One phone call between two players separated by a generation helped send the future #1 pick to Provo, Utah. Now, Provo was not on anyone's radar as a destination for the top recruit in the country. BYU is not Duke. It's not Kentucky. It's not Kansas. It's a school in the mountains of Utah with a strong academic tradition and, until very recently, a basketball program that had never so much as attracted a 5-star recruit. Dybantsa became the highest-rated recruit and first-ever 5-star high school recruit to sign, with the Cougars rated as the top recruit in the country, according to all recruiting services, On3, 247 Sports, ESPN, and Rivals. The day he announced his decision, the basketball world genuinely could not believe what it was seeing. On December 10, 2024, Dybantsa announced on First Take that he would be committing to BYU as he wanted to play basketball, without much off-court attention. Not North Carolina, not Kansas, not a program with banners and retired jerseys and decades of NBA pipeline history. BYU. And his reasoning was actually the most rational thing he could have said. He wanted to focus on basketball, get developed properly, and not be swallowed up by the circus that surrounds the biggest programs. Dybantsa's recruitment has been trending in this direction for a long time, but the fact that BYU just landed the top recruit in the country shows that it really is a whole new era in recruiting, said Adam Finkelstein, director of scouting for 247 Sports. A whole new era, because the calculus has shifted. For Dybantsa, the traditional recruiting ladder, Kentucky, Duke, Kansas, mattered less than finding a coach who could replicate an NBA environment. And that coach was Kevin Young. Dybantsa explained the BYU decision himself. My ultimate goal is the NBA. And after they hired Coach Young, they hired a strength coach from the Milwaukee Bucks, a dietitian from the Suns, analytics from the Suns. Young just started stacking prototypes around us, and I wanted to learn in the best environment to prepare for the league. And I think I got that from BYU. This wasn't just a college choice. It was a preparation strategy. He reverse engineered the path, asked himself what the NBA required, found the college setup that came closest to replicating it, and committed there. Young had built something at BYU that almost no one else was building at a mid-major. When Dybantsa arrived, Young had sold him on the ways BYU modeled itself. After an NBA team with real NBA professionals, the players on the team had meal plans designed by Danielle Lafada, who was previously the director of performance nutrition for the Suns and Phoenix Mercury, a college basketball team using an NBA-level nutritionist, shot tracking technology straight from the league, analytics that the NBA was still testing, already standardized at BYU. Dybantsa walked into a college program that treated him like an NBA player from day one, and he responded to that environment exactly the way you'd expect someone of his caliber to respond. As a freshman, he averaged 25 5 points, 6-8 rebounds, 3-7 assists, and 1-1 steals per game on 51% shooting across 35 starts. He earned the Julius Erving Award, consensus first-team All-American, Big 12 Freshman of the Year, and the NCAA scoring title. The NCAA scoring title as a freshman. At BYU, in the Big 12, one of the most competitive conferences in the country. Every honor available to a college player in his first year, he won. He was dragging that team through an injury-plagued season on pure will. BYU was plagued with injuries throughout the season, and there were times Dybantsa was required to step up. The first game that came to Young's mind was the comeback against Clemson at Madison Square Garden, where Dybantsa had 22 second-half points and finished with a game-high 28 points, with 9 rebounds and 6 assists. BYU was down 21 points at halftime, making it the largest second-half comeback in school history. Down 21 at halftime, at Madison Square Garden against a quality opponent, and he brought them all the way back. That's not a stat line, that's a statement. His sophomore rival, Darren Peterson from Kansas, had been his foil throughout high school, a shadow that followed him up every ladder he climbed in one of the most impressive high school games. In recent memory, the two combined for 107 points. Peterson scored 58 points as prolific Prep got the win, with the game winner, while Dybantsa had 49. Peterson and Dybantsa, two players who'd been competing since they were teenagers, trading blows for the top spot in every recruiting ranking, every mock draft, every scouting board. That rivalry would follow them all the way to draft night in Brooklyn. And draft night produced its own twist in the rivalry. After the Utah Jazz selected Peterson with the second overall pick, Peterson's father went over to Dybantsa's table and had a long hug with Ace. The two players have been battling since high school, which has forged a tremendous amount of mutual respect between the two players. No one and no two, Washington and Utah. Two kids from different coasts who'd spent years pushing each other to be better, now officially heading in different directions, toward franchises with vastly different plans, vastly different rosters, and vastly different pressures. The contrast between those two landing spots matters more than it might initially seem. Peterson goes to Utah, a young rebuilding team with a clear runway, a roster that isn't crowded at the top, and a franchise ready to hand him the keys. Utah can roll out a starting five of Keontae George, Peterson, Lauri Markkanen, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Walker Kessler. That's a clean setup. Peterson walks in as the crown jewel of a youth movement, slotting into a structure that says, "This is yours." Dybantsa walks into something fundamentally different. He walks into a team with two veteran stars already entrenched, one of them freshly signed to a $212 million contract, and a front office that has openly said it wants to compete in the playoffs next season. It's a roster built to compete in the Eastern Conference playoffs, and adding Dybantsa only strengthens the case for a deep run through the East in year one. That's the theory. But theory requires everyone in that locker room to agree on the hierarchy. And hierarchies in NBA locker rooms are rarely as clean as organizational charts. This is the tension that the basketball world started unpacking almost immediately. After the pick was made, not whether Dybantsa is talented enough. Everyone agrees he's generationally gifted. The tension is structural. It's about what happens when an unstoppable force, a player who has been no one everywhere he's gone since his freshman year of high school, arrives at a destination where the structure already has stars occupying the spaces he needs to grow into. And that tension has a name, it has a history, and it has consequences. His rookie deal puts the stakes in dollars and cents. His rookie deal in the NBA is expected to be worth $69 million. $69 million for a teenager who hasn't played an NBA minute yet. That's the price of a franchise cornerstone, of a player the organization expects to carry them for the next decade, and it creates an obligation that runs both ways. Washington is betting $69 million on Dybantsa's development. Dybantsa is betting his prime years on Washington's ability to put the right pieces around him. That's not just losing, that's institutional dysfunction, masquerading as a rebuild. And Dybantsa is now the centerpiece of the plan to end it. There were genuinely elaborate trade scenarios being floated before draft night. Bleacher Report laid out 5 different deals Washington could make with the No. 1 pick, including sending it to Memphis for multiple future firsts, or flipping it to Utah for the No. 2 pick and Ace Bailey, or even packaging it as leverage in a potential Giannis Antetokounmpo trade. The Bucks were open for business on trade calls and offers for Antetokounmpo, per ESPN's Shams Charania. The whole pre-draft ecosystem was humming with the energy of a franchise that had options, and wasn't entirely sure which one to take. In the end, they kept the pick and took Dybantsa, but the fact that the conversation about trading him, before he was even drafted, existed at all, tells you something about the uncertainty that surrounds Washington's project. And it makes the post-draft environment feel even more loaded, because now the question isn't just about whether Dybantsa fits. It's about whether Washington has fully committed to making him work, or whether the same restlessness that drove them to consider trading down is going to resurface 6 months from now, when things get hard. Draft night itself was a moment of genuine emotion. For most of his soaring rise as the prospective No. 1 pick, Dybantsa had no idea of the power he possessed in his first name. About a year ago, somebody asked me, "What's AJ stand for?" he recalls. "I told them Anicet," they asked. "What's that mean?" And honestly, I didn't know. So I looked it up. It turns out that my name translated from Greek means undefeated. Undefeated. His name literally means undefeated. Sitting inside his childhood home in Brockton the night before announcing the biggest decision of his life, he sat with that knowledge. When he declared for the draft on April 23, he returned to his former elementary school, where his name is immortalized. On a page he scribbled in his first grade yearbook, "My name is Anicet. When I grow up, I'd like to be a basketball player." First grade, he wrote it down as a 6-year-old, and 20-some years later, he walked across a stage in Brooklyn and made it official. That's the story. That's the man. Someone who has always known, with a certainty that most people never find in a lifetime, exactly what he was meant to do. And that certainty doesn't evaporate when the circumstances get complicated. If anything, it intensifies. So when Washington puts him in a situation where the path forward isn't perfectly clear, where the star hierarchy is murky, where the roster is crowded, where the rebuild timeline is being artificially compressed by veteran signings, that certainty becomes a source of friction, because Anicet Dybantsa has never been content to wait. And that's precisely the quality that makes him great, and precisely the quality that makes Washington's next chapter so electric to watch. The analysts who broke down the pick in the hours after draft night were careful with their words, but the undertones were unmistakable. NBA.com's draft profile projects Dybantsa as a high-usage, multi-level scoring wing who can create his own shot from anywhere inside 20 feet, get to the free throw line, and switch across positions on the other end. High usage. Those two words carry enormous weight. A high-usage player needs the ball. He needs plays designed for him. He needs to be central to the offense, not peripheral to it. And right now, Washington has a $212 million guard who was the centerpiece of the Atlanta Hawks offense for years, plus Anthony Davis, one of the most dominant forces in the league when healthy. Where does high usage come from on that roster? The NBA.com profile also drew a line of comparison that raised eyebrows. His combination of size, coordination, and shot-making ability from the mid-range is described as rare, drawing comparisons to Jaylen Brown, DeMar DeRozan, and a bigger version of Tracy McGrady. DeMar DeRozan needed a massive offensive load and a system designed around his mid-range mastery to become an all-star. Tracy McGrady needed to be the focal point of his team to reach his ceiling. These aren't players who thrived in supporting roles. These are players who needed and were given the stage. Dybantsa has the tools to be a franchise centerpiece. He will step into a starting role from day one and carry a significant offensive load from the jump. Carry a significant offensive load from day one. That's the projection from the NBA's own analysis. And it's in direct tension with a roster construction that already has two veteran stars who've been building their own offensive loads. For the better part of a decade, Trae Young's arrival in Washington is itself a story worth examining because it tells you something about the organizational instincts at play here. Washington acquired Young from the Atlanta Hawks in a trade in January. Young then changed his jersey number from 11 to 3, which he wore at Norman North High School in Oklahoma. That jersey number change matters. You don't change your jersey number because someone asked you to. You do it because you feel ownership over the space you're occupying. Young came to Washington and immediately put a flag in the ground. The same Trae Young who is now Dybantsa's teammate was, for years, the face of a Hawks team that was built entirely around him. Every play, every offensive set, every decision passed through Young. He was the conductor, the engine, the guy the entire organization pointed at when they needed a bucket. Now he's signing a $212 million deal with Washington, and the franchise is simultaneously installing a 19-year-old as its pillar. Those two things can coexist, but not without negotiation, not without someone yielding ground. And in the NBA, the person who yields is rarely the one with the biggest contract. So long as Young and Davis can keep their names out of the injured reserve in defiance of Father Time, that's the caveat that hangs over Washington's entire short-term ambition. Young has had an injury-riddled recent season. Davis's health has been a question mark for years. If either of those veterans spends time on the shelf, and history says it's a matter of when, not if, then the team is going to lean on to hold everything together is the same 19-year-old they just paid $69 million, which means Dybantsa's role could escalate rapidly, which means his path to the ball, to the usage, to the starring role he was born to play, might open up faster than anyone planned. What does Dybantsa himself see when he looks at this situation? After the draft, he went to Washington to meet the Wizards brass. He spent most of the day after the draft in the nation's capital meeting, Wizards management, and conducting interviews with DC media. After a short break, he'd be back to work, trying to become what he's always dreamed he could be. He's not wasting time. He's not easing in. The mentality is already in NBA mode, already locked in on what needs to happen next. He spoke about DC with a kind of hungry curiosity. "I just know they're super hungry," he said of DC's love for basketball. Obviously, they have a great young core, and the potential is there, obviously. He acknowledged the young core, he acknowledged the potential, he was diplomatic. But read between those words, he said, the potential is there, not the pieces are there, potential, which is exactly what Washington has been running on for the better part of 2 decades. Potential without payoff. The payoff depends on Dybantsa being everything the scouting reports say he is, and on the Wizards being honest with themselves about what they're building. According to reports, Dybantsa said he wanted to do whatever was needed, learn from Young and Davis, and fit in alongside Washington's several young wings. Washington's management has already emphasized defense for the new franchise pick. The posture is right. The words are right. But the NBA doesn't run on words. It runs on who gets the ball when and how often. And that conversation, the real one, the one behind closed locker room doors, is only just beginning. Draft night ended the way these things always end, with a celebration. Dybantsa put on the Wizards hat. He hugged his parents. He shook Commissioner Silver's hand. When his name was called by NBA Commissioner Adam Silver, it was a larger-than-life moment, shared with all of Cougar Nation. His elementary school classmates watched on a screen back in Brockton. His coaches and teammates at BYU celebrated in Provo. His father, Ace, the man whose name he carried onto that stage, was right there in the green room, sharing the moment that a Congolese immigrant who made it to France, then America, had spent years helping his son reach. And then almost immediately, the basketball world moved on from the celebration and started doing what it always does, picking the story apart, asking the hard questions, running the projections, looking at that Wizards roster, and trying to figure out where the seams are. Because that's the nature of being the no one pick. You don't get to enjoy the moment for long. The expectations arrive before the trophy case is even unpacked. AJ Dybantsa's story in Washington hasn't started yet. What started in Brooklyn was the announcement. The story, the real one, begins when he walks into that Wizards practice facility, laces up in the same locker room as Trae Young and Anthony Davis, and has to figure out in real time how to be himself in a place that wasn't built entirely with him in mind. And as we'll see in the sections ahead, the forces pulling at that story, the history, the roster dynamics, the expectations, the franchise's complicated past, are going to make the first chapter of his NBA career one of the most closely watched in a generation. Before you can understand the tension of what Washington is walking into, you have to understand what was poured into building this player. AJ Dybantsa didn't arrive at the no one pick position by accident. He didn't get lucky. He was constructed by his father, by his coaches, by a relentless series of environments he chose deliberately, into the exact thing scouts had been waiting years to see. To understand the friction ahead, you first have to understand the architecture of the player at the center of it. The story of Ace Dybantsa is the story before the story. Ace was born in the Republic of Congo, moved to Grigny, France, and eventually made his way to America. That's a journey across 3 continents, through multiple languages and cultures, driven by the kind of ambition that doesn't stay still. Ace didn't land in Boston and wait for something to happen to his family. He poured everything he had into his son, not just into basketball, but into the character that makes basketball meaningful. When AJ stood at that podium and insisted his full name, his father's name, be announced to the world, it wasn't a marketing moment. It was a debt being honored. I wanted Adam to call me Anicet because I also wanted to honor my dad. Because when you carry your father's name into the biggest moment of your life, you're not just playing for yourself anymore. But there's something crucial to understand here. The attention didn't slow him down. It motivated him to seek harder competition. Dybantsa transferred to prolific prep in Napa, California at the end of his freshman year. He pulled up roots from Massachusetts, from his neighborhood, from the school where he'd already become a legend, and moved across the country to play against better players. That's not a decision most teenagers make. That's a decision that comes from a specific kind of clarity about what matters and what doesn't. Comfort didn't matter, growth did. Prolific prep was a proving ground of a different order. This was a school built specifically to develop elite basketball talent, a place where future NBA players went to sharpen each other, where the practice environments were as competitive as most college programs. He averaged 21 2 points, 9 rebounds, and 3 assists per game, en route to earning second-team Max Prep's All-America accolades at Prolific Prep, helping them win their second consecutive Grind Session World Championship as a sophomore playing against the best high school players in the country. The summer circuits were where the national profile truly exploded. Anicet Dybantsa arrived on the national stage before most prospects finished their sophomore year of high school, earning Massachusetts Gatorade Player of the Year honors as a freshman, and leading the Nike Peach Jam in scoring at 25.8 points per game. 25.8 at the Peach Jam, which is, for those unfamiliar with AAU basketball, essentially the championship event of the summer circuit. The game where the entire NBA scouting community shows up, where future top 5 picks test themselves against each other, and where reputations are made or destroyed in the course of a single weekend. He made his reputation with authority. He was named the Peach Jam Offensive MVP after leading the Oakland Soldiers to the title game. He averaged 23 1 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, and 1 steals per game. Offensive MVP at the highest profile AAU event in the country. Before his junior year of high school, the NBA's scouting community was no longer just circling his name. They were building files on him, tracking him, having conversations about where he'd fit at the next level. The international stage added another dimension. He won 3 gold medals for Team USA at the 2023 FIBA America's U16 Championship, 2024 FIBA U17 World Cup, and 2025 FIBA U19 Men's World Cup, where he was named the tournament MVP. 3 gold medals, MVP of the U19 World Cup, 3 different age groups, 3 different international tournaments. 3 times he came out with the most hardware available. This is a player who performs when the stakes are highest, who gets better when the moment gets bigger. That's not a coincidence, that's a character trait. The 2024 Nike Hoop Summit was the moment that crystallized just how different Dybantsa was from the rest of his generation. He was the youngest player to compete in the 2024 Nike Hoop Summit, finishing with a game-high 21 points, going 7 of 14 from the field, and adding 7 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 steals, while going against the top recruits in the 2024 class, including Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper, and Asa Newell. He was the youngest player at an event that included Cooper Flagg, the guy who would go no one in the 2025 draft. He came in as a participant from the class below, against players a full year ahead of him, and finished with the most points in the game. Game high against future lottery picks, younger than all of them. Cooper Flagg and Dybantsa have always inhabited a kind of parallel existence in the basketball world. Both elevated, both generational, both carrying the expectations of franchises before they'd proven anything at the professional level. Dybantsa mentioned Flagg by name on draft night, putting him in the same conversation as LeBron James and Allen Iverson, as the standard he wanted to match. He said being no one meant a lot to him, and that he definitely wanted to be a staple to be no one in the NBA draft, and be in the same conversation with LeBron James and Cooper Flagg. Back-to-back years, back-to-back generational prospects, both heading into situations loaded with expectation. The Flagg comparison also matters because Flagg went to the Boston Celtics, a team that had won a championship, and then welcomed him into an established winning culture. Dybantsa went to Washington, 2 entirely different organizational ecosystems, and how those ecosystems shaped these 2 players over the next 5 years will be one of the defining storylines in NBA basketball. By the time Dybantsa sat down to announce his college choice on ESPN's First Take, the recruiting world had been spinning for months. Programs from across the country were making their pitches. North Carolina, with its legendary history and NBA pipeline, was in the conversation. Kansas State, Texas Tech, programs that had everything a top recruit traditionally looks for. Big arenas, long histories, passionate fan bases, and pathways lined with NBA-ready alumni. He chose BYU, and the reaction was disbelief. Anicet Dybantsa choosing BYU, a school not known for its basketball program, over traditional choices like Kansas and North Carolina, as well as rising powers like Alabama, changed the face of college recruitment. SB Nation's fan page for BYU named that historic moment. The second biggest moment for Cougars basketball in 2024. Only Kevin Young's arrival at BYU as the new head coach was ranked above it. That's remarkable. The arrival of a coach was considered a bigger moment than landing the number one recruit in the country, which tells you exactly how pivotal Young's hiring was and exactly why Dybantsa viewed him as worth the unconventional route. Young's recruitment of Dybantsa was one of the most aggressive and creative in recent college basketball history. Dybantsa's parents actually toured the BYU campus first, which took place when Young was finishing out his tenure with the Phoenix Suns as an assistant coach. Young wanted to be part of their visit, even though the Suns were in Minnesota for the NBA playoffs. Young said he left after a Suns practice, took an Uber to the airport, flew to Provo for the visit, then flew back to Minnesota. Arriving around 3 a.m. the next morning, he took a red-eye to recruit a teenager's parents while in the middle of an NBA playoff run. That kind of commitment, that urgency, communicated something to the Dybantsa family that no amount of campus brochures ever could. The physical environment Young built at BYU was unlike anything in college basketball. After every practice, a multitude of staffers, there are 16 student managers and 6 graduate assistants, crunch numbers and look at film on computers stacked on a long table near Young's office, with the goal of taking this program to a place it has never been. 16 student managers, 6 graduate assistants, shot tracking technology, smart balls, analytics infrastructure that most NBA teams were still developing. Young had turned Provo, Utah into a prototype basketball laboratory, and Dybantsa, with his obsessive approach to skill development, was drawn to it like a magnet. The relationship between Dybantsa and Kevin Young became the single most important dynamic of his college career. Young spent years coaching in the NBA, working with players like Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Chris Paul, and brought that knowledge directly into the BYU program. When Dybantsa missed a shot in practice, the analytics staff could tell him exactly where on the rim the ball hit, what the trajectory was, and where his hand was positioned on release. Sebastian, BYU's director of analytics, put sensors on every Cougars player in practice and tracked every field goal attempt down to the degree from which the ball came off a player's fingertips, something the NBA was testing, but was already standardized at BYU. That's an elite-level feedback loop, and Dybantsa absorbed it all. On the day he declared for the NBA draft, he went back to his elementary school. He returned to Davis Elementary, where his name is immortalized on a page. He scribbled into his first grade yearbook, "My name is Anicet. When I grow up, I'd like to be a basketball player." He'd written the ending before the story started. 20-something years later, he stood in that same school and announced that the next chapter of that story was beginning. The kid who wrote "I'd like to be a basketball player" in first grade was about to be the no-one pick in the NBA draft. The BYU season itself was a masterclass in carrying a team. Dybantsa led the nation in scoring, dragging an injury-depleted Hunger Games team, in the words of head coach Kevin Young, to 2 victories in the Big 12 tournament. Hunger Games team. That's Young's own description of the roster situation. A team so ravaged by injuries that every game felt like a survival exercise. And Dybantsa carried them, not just statistically, but emotionally, competitively, in the moments that required someone to step up when everyone around him was hurting. The numbers were historic. Dybantsa scored 894 points in 2025-26, the third most by a freshman in a season in NCAA Division I history. Third most ever by a Division I freshman. He was doing things at BYU that had only been done by 2 other college freshmen in the entire history of the sport. And he was doing it with a depleted supporting cast, against the best competition in his conference, on a team that without him would have been nowhere near the NCAA tournament. He is the 4th Big 12 player to go no one in the draft, following Oklahoma State's Cade Cunningham, 2021, Kansas's Andrew Wiggins, 2014, and Oklahoma's Blake Griffin, 2009. He is also the first player to lead Division I in scoring and be selected with the top pick of the NBA draft since Purdue's Glenn Robinson in 1994. Glenn Robinson, 1994. That's how long it's been since a player led the nation in scoring and went first overall. 32 years. In 3 decades of drafts that produced LeBron James, Tim Duncan, Zion Williamson, Victor Wembanyama. Nobody led the country in scoring and then went no one. Until now. The Combine was the last piece of the pre-draft puzzle, and it raised the ceiling even further. At the NBA Draft Combine, Dybantsa led all participants with a 42-inch vertical. 42 inches, best vertical at the combine among every prospect in the class. For a 6'9" wing, that's not just impressive. It's the kind of physical trait that makes defenders genuinely uncomfortable. Every pull-up, every putback, every lob, his second jump ability gives him plays that players his size simply shouldn't have. The scouting community had been building the case for months, and the combine numbers only reinforced it. He's described as a 6'9" two-way wing with a 6'11" wingspan and 8 in standing reach. A high-level athlete with incredible fluidity in his upper and lower body, who throws down dunks and tip slams you don't see often at this level. He attacks the basket with aggression, is quick off the ground with an impressive second jump, and jumps well off either foot or both feet, finding dunk opportunities in the half court that the defense has trouble contesting. Every physical attribute you design in a laboratory for a modern NBA wing, the size, the length, the explosiveness, the fluidity, Dybantsa has it. And yet, the conversation about his game isn't primarily about his physical gifts. It's about the mind behind the gifts. At just 19 years of age, AJ commands the basketball with the wisdom, patience, and confidence of a 29-year-old NBA veteran, with a refined scoring palette of pull-up mid-range jumpers and a wide array of spins, pump fakes, and dribble packages. He is a puppet master with the ball in his hands and an underrated playmaker who only stands to improve with the increased spacing of the NBA game. A puppet master. That's a specific kind of player. That's someone who doesn't just respond to the defense, who orchestrates what the defense does, who sets the table, who makes everyone else around him better without sacrificing his own production. Those players are extraordinarily rare, and when they arrive in situations that don't give them enough room to work, things can get uncomfortable quickly. His weaknesses are real, and honest scouting acknowledges them. One area of his game that has significant room for improvement is the consistency of his outside shot. He can hit difficult threes and is a capable outside shooter, but at this point is not efficient from beyond the arc and can have some really cold stretches from deep. 33% from three in his BYU season is a number that works in college, but will get exploited at the NBA level if it doesn't improve. Defenses will pack the paint, force him left, dare him to beat them from distance. His mid-range game is there. His ability to get to the line is there. But to fully unlock as an elite NBA scorer, to be the kind of scorer the Wizards need him to be, the three ball has to come. His defensive effort has been another area of scrutiny. His defensive effort needs a boost, but he has the size and strength to instantly convert effort into production at that end. That's the most optimistic framing of a real concern. He has all the physical tools to be a genuinely impactful two-way player. The length, the lateral mobility, the wingspan. But tools and production aren't the same thing. Defense requires consistent attention, consistent positioning, consistent communication, and that's a different skill set than scoring. Washington is actually trying to address the defensive concern head-on. They challenged him directly. "If we pick you, we want you to play defense 94 feet and pick up." He said he definitely brings that too, full court pressure. That's what the Wizards told their future franchise player they want from him. Not just defense, not just scoring. They want him to be a defensive engine from the moment the other team takes the ball out. That's an ambitious ask for a 19-year-old in year one. But if he delivers it, the entire picture of what Washington can be shifts dramatically. The question of who Dybantsa is going to be in the NBA isn't just a basketball question. It's a question about identity. For most of his soaring rise, he had no idea of the power he possessed in his first name. When someone asked what AJ stood for, he told them Anicet. They asked what it meant. He didn't know, so he looked it up. His name translated from Greek means undefeated. Undefeated. Carry that word with you through the rest of this story, because it's going to matter. A player who carries the word undefeated into the league, not as an attitude, but as his literal name, is a player who is going to resist situations that feel like defeats, situations where his talent is constrained, situations where the system doesn't fully use him, situations where the path to becoming what he's meant to become is blocked by something or someone else. He's never been in a situation he didn't eventually dominate. Not at St. Sebastian's, not at Prolific Prep, not at Utah Prep, not on the EYBL circuit, not at BYU, not at the U19 World Cup. Every environment he's entered, he's risen to the top of. Not because circumstances were handed to him, because he made them bend to his will. The big question, the one hovering over Washington's entire next chapter, is whether the Wizards' roster construction is going to give him the room to do that. or whether for the first time in his life, he's going to walk into a wall he can't immediately knock down. Let's be honest about what the Washington Wizards put together this offseason. It's not a clean, coherent vision. It's an ambitious, messy, hopeful amalgamation of parts assembled in a rush. Veterans parachuted in from other failing situations. Young players still figuring out their roles. And now a 19-year-old franchise cornerstone who is supposed to tie it all together. The organizational optimism is real, but so are the structural complications. Start with Trae Young. He arrived in Washington via trade from Atlanta, where he'd spent his entire career as the unquestioned centerpiece of the offense. Washington acquired Young from the Atlanta Hawks in a trade in January. He came to a Wizards team that had been spinning its wheels for years, and he changed the energy immediately. Then, on the eve of the draft, he opted out of his existing deal and signed a new one. Young signed a 4-year, $212 million extension. With the franchise on the eve of the draft, 4 years, $212 million. That's not a bridge contract. That's a commitment. And it signals loudly that Washington views Trae as a central piece of whatever they're building, not a placeholder. But here's the tension in that commitment. Trae Young is a point guard who needs the ball in his hands to function his entire game. The pull-up threes from 30 feet, the floaters, the pick-and-roll wizardry, the passing, all of it requires him to be the primary ball handler and decision-maker. You cannot have him running the offense and simultaneously have a different player serving as the guy. Those two things conflict, and now Washington has both. Then there's Anthony Davis. The Wizards sent significant future assets to acquire Davis in February, including the Oklahoma City Thunder's 2026 first-round pick that they'd sent to Dallas as part of the package. Davis is, when healthy, one of the most dominant forces in the league. He changes defensive schemes. He commands double teams. He can score from the post, the mid-range, the high pick and roll. He's the kind of player who makes every team better. But when healthy is doing an enormous amount of work in that sentence. Davis has spent the better part of his career fighting injuries, the knee issues, the back problems, the multiple missed months. His availability has been the single biggest question mark on his career since his early days in New Orleans. The Wizards need Young and Davis to keep their names out of the injured reserve. In defiance of Father Time doesn't lose, and Washington's plan depends on two veterans who've both been ravaged by injuries holding up for long enough to give Dybantsa the veteran infrastructure to grow inside. The scenario where both of them go down, or where their production declines, is actually the scenario where Dybantsa thrives most easily, because then the ball finds him by default. The offense flows through him out of necessity. The stage is his because there's no one else, and history says that scenario is not far-fetched. What happens when Washington's expensive veterans are on the shelf, and the rookie is left holding the franchise? Does the team sink, or does the no-one pick rise to fill every inch of the space? But beyond the veterans, there's a young core that deserves attention, because they were already developing their own identities before Dybantsa arrived. The team includes Alex Sarr, Keyshawn George, Tree Johnson, Bilal Coulibaly, Bub Carrington, and Will Riley. Players who were acquired through the lottery process, who've been building their games in Washington's system, who have their own developmental timelines and their own competitive instincts. Alex Sarr, in particular, is a player who has his own claim to being the future of this franchise. The Wizards selected him with a top pick in the previous draft cycle. He's a 7-footer with perimeter skills, shot-blocking ability, and a genuine offensive upside that scouts were excited about before Washington ever won the Dybantsa lottery. Now Sarr has to figure out his role on a team that just paid $69 million to a new cornerstone, who plays a completely different position. These two don't step on each other perfectly. Sarr is a center, Dybantsa is a wing, but roster construction is never just about positions. It's about minutes, about touches, about who the team calls on when they need a bucket. Bilal Coulibaly is another name worth noting in this context. He's a young wing with defensive energy, NBA-ready athleticism, and a role that was already being defined within the Washington system. And now there's a new #1 pick at his position, who is being told he'll fit in as an off-ball guy that can score in different ways. Off-ball, for a player who averaged 25.5 points per game in college as the primary ball handler, who led Division I in scoring. Off-ball is an interesting word choice for someone of that caliber. The Wizards' front office is aware of the crowding problem, and they've tried to address it with narrative. The messaging has been consistent. Dybantsa will fit. Young will teach him. Davis will mentor him. The culture is right. The plan is in place. Liansis told ESPN, "We're on the plan that we articulated. I thought it would take 4 to 5 years, and this really was the third offseason where we were developing young players, deconstructing, looking to add for the go forward. A year ahead of plan. That's the owner talking. That's confidence." But owners have said versions of that sentence many times in Washington's recent history, and the results haven't matched the confidence. Since the most recent playoff appearance, the Wizards have gone 120 to 290, the worst record in the NBA in that span. Worst record in the league over that stretch. This isn't a franchise that has earned the benefit of the doubt on trust the plan. This is a franchise that has been watching its plan fail for 5 consecutive years. So when they say Dybantsa fits perfectly, when they say the pieces are all aligned, they're asking for a level of trust that their track record doesn't automatically justify. The market itself is part of the problem. Washington, D.C. is not a basketball city, the way New York, Los Angeles, or even Chicago is. The selection of Dybantsa is a significant moment for the franchise and the city, given that the Wizards haven't made the playoffs since 2021 and have not been past the second round since 1979. That's the last time this franchise made a deep playoff run. That's not just organizational failure, that's cultural failure. The culture of basketball in DC has been depressed for so long that rebuilding it requires more than good draft picks. It requires wins. Actual, consecutive, meaningful wins. And the patience to let Dybantsa develop into the player who can ultimately deliver them. The financial picture adds another layer of complexity. Young intends to sign a 4-year deal worth approximately $212 million to stay with the Wizards. Davis is eligible to sign a 4-year extension in August. If Davis signs his extension on top of Young's deal, Washington's cap sheet becomes extraordinarily constrained. The money going to Young and Davis, 2 veteran stars who are both at the stages of their careers, where decline is a real possibility, could handcuff the franchise's flexibility precisely when Dybantsa is entering his prime years. This is the classic NBA veteran vs. rookie salary tension. A franchise pays for stars it has now, but the star it drafted is the star it needs for the future. If those veterans underperform or if their health becomes an issue, the team is stuck. They've committed the kind of money that you can't just walk away from, and Dybantsa would be in a position of watching large chunks of the cap go to players who aren't helping him reach the next level of his career. That's a frustration that has broken apart more than a few promising franchise rebuilds. The pre-draft trade speculation now takes on a different shape when you see it through this lens. The Wizards hadn't finished celebrating their lottery jackpot before team president Michael Winger was telling the Stein line that the team would at least consider trading down. Some analysts interpreted that as front office due diligence, exploring value, being smart. But another reading is more uncomfortable. It's a franchise that looked at its own roster construction and wondered, even briefly, whether adding the consensus number pick to this specific situation was actually the right call, whether the fit was clean enough, whether Dybantsa, surrounded by all these pieces, would truly be able to become what he needed to become. The parallel to other number picks who landed in complicated situations is impossible to avoid. The history of the NBA is littered with generational prospects who arrived at franchises that weren't ready for them, or who arrived at franchises that were simultaneously too ambitious and too broken to give them the right foundation. Some of those prospects thrived anyway. Some were stunted. Some demanded or received changes that altered their entire career arc. The Wizards' own history with no one picks is instructive. Dybantsa joins John Wall, 2010, and Kwame Brown, 2001, as Washington's only no one picks. John Wall was everything a franchise could want. Explosive, dynamic, fiercely competitive, and Washington's inability to build a championship-caliber team around him became one of the defining disappointments of his career. He spent a decade in D.C. without winning a playoff series. Eventually, the relationship unraveled completely, and Wall was traded away from the city he'd given everything to. He wasn't a failure. The franchise was. Kwame Brown's story is even more cautionary. Selected first overall by Washington in 2001, he never became the player that pick demanded. The franchise environment, the pressure, the expectations, the lack of proper developmental infrastructure contributed to a career that remains defined by unfulfilled potential. Kwame Brown is the name invoked whenever people want to describe an organizational failure dressed up as an individual failure. Washington has been here before. They know the cost of getting it wrong. So how does the Wizards front office prevent history from repeating itself? The first answer they've offered is the coaching staff and veteran leadership. Young and Davis, whatever their limitations as aging veterans, both know how to win at a high level. Trey reached the Eastern Conference Finals with Atlanta. Davis has a championship ring with the Lakers. That kind of mentorship has genuine value for a 19-year-old learning what it takes to compete in the NBA. Dybantsa said he wanted to do whatever was needed, learn from Young and Davis, and fit in alongside Washington's several young wings. He said all the right things, but doing whatever is needed means something very specific to someone whose college season consisted of leading the nation in scoring. Whatever is needed in his mind may be different from whatever is needed in the coaching staff's mind. The space between those two definitions is where the tension lives. The NBA's most successful #1 picks in the modern era have one thing in common. They entered organizations that built around them, not organizations where they were asked to fit around someone else. LeBron went to Cleveland and the Cavs built around him. Zion went to New Orleans and the Pelicans built around him. Cooper Flagg went to Boston. And while Boston already had a championship infrastructure, they made it clear Flagg was central to the next chapter. Washington has done something different. They imported 2 veterans first, built a foundation they then added Dybantsa to, which creates a fundamentally different dynamic than what the most successful draft picks have experienced. There's also the question of playing style. Dybantsa's game is built on ball handling, creation, and pull-up scoring. His best basketball happens when the ball is in his hands, in the high post or at the elbow, when he has enough space to read the defense. When the play is being built through him, he projects as a high-usage, multi-level scoring wing who can create his own shot from anywhere inside 20 feet, get to the free throw line, and switch across positions on the other end. Trae Young's game also requires the ball in his hands to function, not at the elbow. In his hands at the top of the key, running pick-and-roll actions, scanning the floor for shooters, initiating every possession. These 2 players, Dybantsa and Trae, aren't naturally complementary in the same way a point guard and a spot-up shooter are complementary. They're both creation-first players who need authority over the ball to do their best work. Finding minutes for both of them to operate in their preferred modes requires genuine creativity from the coaching staff. The Wizards coaches know this. It's why the immediate messaging emphasized Dybantsa's off-ball capabilities, his ability to catch and score, to work in transition, to function when someone else is making the decisions. And those capabilities are real. He's not a player who can only function with the ball in his hands. But there's a difference between what a player can do and what maximizes their potential. And maximizing Dybantsa's potential probably requires more ball handling responsibility than his first season in Washington is going to give him. The defensive mandate is the one place where Dybantsa's role in Washington feels genuinely exciting and genuinely aligned. Washington has been one of the worst defensive teams in the league for years. Young is not a great defender. He's a generational offensive weapon, but defense is not where he earns his money. Davis, when healthy, can anchor a defense in the paint, but the perimeter has been a disaster. Ball handlers carve through Washington like it's an open gym. And Dybantsa, with his 6'11" wingspan and his 42-inch vertical and his ability to switch across positions, could change that overnight. Defensively, his size, lateral mobility, and competitive motor give him the tools to switch across multiple positions. Switch across multiple positions. That's the modern defensive premium. The ability to guard the point guard, the 2 guard, the small forward, and sometimes even the power forward. Without giving up a fatal mismatch, Dybantsa can do that. And if the Wizards develop him as a defensive anchor, as the player who erases mistakes on the other end, they have a clearer path to becoming meaningful in the Eastern Conference than almost any other path available to them. The catch is that elite defense requires commitment, not just athleticism, commitment. The willingness to fight through screens, to give up easy scoring possessions, to get into the right defensive position, to sacrifice body position for the good of the team. His defensive effort needs a boost. That's the honest assessment. The talent is there. The effort has been inconsistent. Washington is betting that the right coaching, the right environment, and the right stakes will bring out the defensive intensity that the talent level demands. The single most important variable in all of this is time. Not the next 6 months, not the first season. Time measured in years, in seasons, in the gradual accumulation of experience and failure. and correction and growth that eventually produces an elite NBA player. Dybantsa is 19. He was born in 2007. He has potentially 15 years of peak professional basketball ahead of him. What happens in year one barely registers against the full canvas of what his career could be. But try telling that to a city that hasn't made the playoffs in 4 years. Try telling that to an owner who just signed a $212 million veteran to win now. Try telling that to the ticket holders, the fan base, the local media, all of whom have been hearing next year for so long that the phrase has become a punchline. The pressure to produce immediately is real. It doesn't care how old Dybantsa is. It doesn't care that he's still growing. It demands results. And Dybantsa, who declared for the draft the day after BYU's season ended rather than exploring a second year, knew exactly what he was walking into. On April 22, Dybantsa declared for the 2026 NBA draft, in which he was projected as a potential first overall pick. He didn't hesitate. He didn't consider returning. He knew the moment was right, knew the preparation was done, and stepped forward. That's the mentality of a player who isn't afraid of pressure, of a player who actually performs better when the stakes are highest, of a player whose name means undefeated. So maybe Washington's complicated situation isn't a trap for Dybantsa. Maybe it's exactly the kind of resistance he needs to become everything he's capable of being. Every great prospect arrives carrying the weight of someone who came before. Analysts, coaches, and fans reach for history to make sense of what they're seeing, to place a player in context, to calibrate expectations, to understand the trajectory of someone whose career hasn't happened yet. For Dybantsa, the comparisons have come early and often, and they're worth examining carefully, because they tell you not just what he might become, but what he'll need in order to get there. The Tracy McGrady comparison deserves the most attention. You get a guy like AJ Dybantsa, he is like a young Tracy McGrady to me, said John Wall, who represented the Wizards at the draft lottery. McGrady, T-Mac, one of the most gifted scorers in NBA history, a 6'8" wing with supernatural athleticism, an unguardable mid-range game, and the ability to fill every statistical column in a box score. He won back-to-back scoring titles. He had a season where he averaged 32 points per game. He was, for a few years in the early 2000s, arguably the best basketball player on the planet. He also never won a playoff series, not one. In 17 seasons, T-Mac's teams never got past the first round when he was the primary player. And the reason wasn't his talent. The reason was that he kept landing in situations, Toronto, Orlando, Houston, where the surrounding cast wasn't quite good enough, or where the team construction wasn't quite right, or where the organizational infrastructure didn't fully capitalize on what he offered. He was extraordinary. The situations around him were ordinary, and ordinary situations don't produce championships for extraordinary players. The NBA.com scouting comparison is equally instructive. His combination of size, coordination, and shot-making ability from the mid-range is described as rare, drawing comparisons to Jaylen Brown, DeMar DeRozan, and a bigger version of Tracy McGrady. Let's take those comparisons one at a time, because each one tells a different story about what Dybantsa could be and what he needs to become. Jaylen Brown is the most immediately applicable comparison for what Washington needs from Dybantsa in year one. Brown arrived in Boston as a young player alongside an established core, Kemba Walker at the time. Later, Jason Tatum emerging simultaneously and had to learn how to be excellent in a complementary role before eventually becoming excellent as a co-star. He didn't always get the ball in his hands first. He didn't always get the play called for him. He deferred, developed, and earned increasing authority as his game matured. That's potentially the template for Dybantsa's first few seasons in Washington. Washington needs to be patient in a way that the current roster construction doesn't naturally invite. Devin Booker is a particularly interesting comp because of the trajectory his career has taken. Booker entered Phoenix as a teenager, played in an early Phoenix environment that was nowhere near playoff ready, and spent his early seasons racking up spectacular individual numbers while the team lost. He could have demanded trades. He could have grown frustrated. Instead, he stayed, developed, and eventually became the player who helped Phoenix reach the NBA Finals. The patience paid off. The environment improved around him. And by the time Phoenix was ready to compete, Booker was ready to lead. Is Washington capable of offering Dybantsa that same arc? That's the honest question. Phoenix's rebuild under Monty Williams and Ryan McDonough took time, but it also had a clear developmental philosophy. a commitment to building around Booker, and eventually the luck of landing Chris Paul. Washington would need similar components. The developmental philosophy is there, at least in the messaging. The commitment to building around Dybantsa is there, at least in the rhetoric. The luck, that's still to be determined. The Durant comparison is the most aspirational and the most demanding. Kevin Durant is one of the 2 or 3 greatest scorers in NBA history. His ability to score from anywhere on the floor, to shoot over any defender, to manufacture points in ways that defy conventional defensive logic, it's singular. If Dybantsa becomes Kevin Durant, Washington isn't just competing, they're winning championships. But Durant's development had a specific context. He arrived in Oklahoma City with Russell Westbrook and James Harden, players who pushed him, competed with him, and forced him to grow. He spent his early NBA seasons surrounded by elite competitors who made every practice feel like a game. The environment wasn't comfortable, it was challenging. And that challenge produced one of the most unstoppable players the sport has ever seen. Washington needs to give Dybantsa that same kind of competitive challenge, not in a sabotaging way, not in a way that blocks his development, but in the way that forces him to be better every single day. Trae Young and Anthony Davis could theoretically provide that challenge. Young will demand that Dybantsa defend, and Dybantsa defending Young in practice will make him a better defender against the league's elite guards. Davis will demand that Dybantsa compete in the post, and Dybantsa going against a physical, skilled big man in practice will prepare him for the bodies he'll face on the road. If Washington frames the veteran presence as a gift rather than an obstacle, the whole situation changes. The Cooper Flag parallel is the one that will define Dybantsa's career in the court of public opinion. Back-to-back years, back-to-back numbered picks, both generational prospects. There are similarities to Cooper Flag in terms of positional versatility, feel for the game, and long-term upside as a point forward who can influence every phase. Flag went to Boston, a championship infrastructure, a franchise with recent rings, a fan base that knows how to win and expects it. Dybantsa went to Washington, a franchise with championship history so distant that it predates half of their fan base's lifetime. The contrast couldn't be sharper. Flag will be measured against a standard of winning from day one, because Boston demands it. Dybantsa will be measured against the standard of making Washington relevant again, which is a harder ask in some ways and a more open canvas in others. If Dybantsa carries Washington to the playoffs in year 2 or 3, he's a hero. If Flag wins a ring in year 2 with Boston, he's in the conversation for greatest player of his generation. Different metrics, different pressures, different everything. The basketball world is going to watch these 2 careers unfold in parallel for the next decade. Every time Dybantsa's season ends before Flag's, the comparisons will intensify. Every time the Wizards' record falls short of the Celtics' record, someone will do the math and ask whether the situation made the difference. And the honest answer, the one that no one wants to say right now, is that organizational context matters enormously in the development of young NBA players. The talent is equal. The situation is not. The Cade Cunningham comparison also applies here, not to Dybantsa's game specifically, but to his situation. Dybantsa is the 4th Big 12 player to go no one in the draft, following Oklahoma State's Cade Cunningham, Detroit Pistons 2021, Kansas's Andrew Wiggins, Cleveland Cavaliers 2014, and Oklahoma's Blake Griffin, Los Angeles Clippers 2009. Cunningham went to Detroit, a franchise every bit as broken as Washington when he arrived. He spent his first few seasons fighting through an organizational mess, injuries, and an underperforming supporting cast. He stayed patient, he worked, and by his 4th season, he was genuinely one of the best point guards in the Eastern Conference. Cunningham's trajectory is actually the most hopeful template for what Dybantsa could be, because it shows that a top pick in a broken franchise doesn't have to become a cautionary tale. With the right player at the center of it, the right character, the right work ethic, the right willingness to lead through losing, a rebuild can become a rise. And Dybantsa has every character trait that Cunningham showed in those early Detroit years. The refusal to quit, the obsession with improvement, the understanding that greatness is earned through suffering, not handed over with the #1 pick card. But Cunningham's path also required something that Detroit gave him and Washington may struggle to provide: a clear #1 status. Cunningham was always Detroit's guy. There was never ambiguity about who the franchise was built around. Washington, by signing Trae Young to $212 million before Dybantsa had played a game, has introduced exactly that ambiguity. Who is the face? Who does the ball flow through? Who is the last shot in a tight game? In Detroit, those questions always had one answer. In Washington, they have at least two, and possibly three if Davis is healthy and engaged. The Glenn Robinson comparison, however distant, carries its own lesson. He is the first player to lead Division I in scoring and be selected with the top pick of the NBA draft since Purdue's Glenn Robinson in 1994. Robinson, big dog, was a dominant college scorer who went first overall to Milwaukee and spent a career that was solid but never quite reached the championship heights his talent suggested. He was a great player on teams that weren't great enough. His individual numbers were impressive. His team's results were not. History records him as pretty good when his talent level suggested elite. Dybantsa is going to battle that version of history with every game he plays. Because the moment he's on a team that doesn't win, the Glenn Robinson comparison, the polite but damning one, starts creeping into the conversation. And the only antidote is either winning or getting to a place where winning is possible. Both of which require Washington to get its organizational act together in a way it hasn't managed in 45 years. The pressure then sits not just on Dybantsa's shoulders, but on the shoulders of everyone who built this situation. Leonsis, Winger, the coaching staff, the veterans who were supposed to provide the bridge. Everyone who promised that this time, Washington had figured it out. Dybantsa can only control what he does on the court, but what surrounds him, what the franchise does with its resources, its minutes, its cap space, its culture, will determine whether his career reads like McGrady, like Booker, like Cunningham, or like someone the basketball world is still waiting to see for the first time. There's a version of this story where everything goes right, where Dybantsa arrives in Washington, wins Trae Young's trust in the first month of training camp, establishes himself as the team's best perimeter defender by November, and starts taking over fourth quarters in January when the stakes get real, where Davis stays healthy enough to anchor the defense and give Dybantsa high-percentage lob opportunities in transition, where the Wizards shock the Eastern Conference, win 45 games, and sneak into the playoffs as a 6 or 7 seed. In that version, everyone looks brilliant. Leonsis looks like a genius for accelerating the rebuild. Winger looks like a genius for the roster construction. Dybantsa looks like a generational talent who made a broken franchise immediately competitive. And Washington, D.C., a city that has been waiting since 1979 for something to celebrate, experiences the kind of collective joy that only basketball can produce. The comparisons in that version will be kinder. People will say he's the next Giannis. They'll say he's the next LeBron. They'll build the narrative around his journey from Brockton to Washington, from obscurity to the pinnacle of professional basketball. The story writes itself beautifully in the version where everything goes right. The question is what happens in the version where everything goes wrong. And that version, unfortunately, is where most NBA stories for broken franchises actually live, which is why Part 5 of this story matters so much. Before we get there, it's worth stepping back to consider something that gets lost in all the analytical noise. AJ Dybantsa is 19 years old. He was born in 2007. He can't legally rent a car in most states. And we're measuring him against Tracy McGrady, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Cade Cunningham before he's played a single NBA minute. The weight of expectation that's been placed on this player, by his franchise, by his fan base, by the basketball media, by this very conversation, is genuinely extraordinary. Obviously, this is a stepping stone, Dybantsa said after being picked. I have a lot more work to do, but this is a testament to all my hard work and discipline and sacrifices that I made. A stepping stone. That's not a throwaway phrase. That's a player telling you in plain language that being no one is not the destination. It's a waypoint. He's already thinking past the draft, past the celebration, past the $69 million rookie deal. He's thinking about what comes next, about what he still needs to become, about the gap between where he is and where he intends to be. That's the mindset of a champion, not a guaranteed champion. The NBA doesn't hand those out. But the mindset that gives a player a fighting chance regardless of the situation around him. And maybe, just maybe, that mindset is sufficient to make Washington work even when the pieces around him aren't perfectly aligned. Maybe Anicet Dybantsa Jr., whose name means undefeated, walks into a complicated situation and does what he's always done, bends it to his will. The comparisons ultimately reveal a truth that analytics can only partially capture. AJ has all the confidence in the world and knows he's the man on the court. He's a clutch shot taker and maker who doesn't back down from challenges. Doesn't back down. That phrase is the key to understanding why the Washington situation, for all its complications, for all its roster crowding and organizational dysfunction and financial constraints, might not break this particular player. Players who don't back down from challenges tend to find ways to impose their will on circumstances. They tend to create their own space. They tend to make the situation bend rather than bending themselves. But the history of the NBA also teaches humility about these projections. For every player who bends the situation to his will, there's another who gets swallowed by it. The situations look identical from the outside. The talent, the mentality, the work ethic, and somehow one player breaks through and another doesn't. And whether Washington has built that structure is the question that's going to haunt the Wizards' front office until the evidence is clear enough to judge. Oscars Washington now faces a set of decisions that will define the franchise for the next decade. They've already made the boldest one, selecting Dybantsa over Darren Peterson at no bun. But the decisions that follow about roles, about minutes, about the coaching philosophy, about how they develop a teenager into a franchise centerpiece, while simultaneously trying to be competitive enough to satisfy a veteran-laden roster, those decisions are the ones that actually matter. And they haven't been made yet. Some of them won't be made until the first game of the season. Some of them will be made in the heat of a tight December game, when a coach has to decide who gets the ball with 30 seconds left. The Wizards' first obligation is clarity. The most damaging thing they can do to Dybantsa's development is ambiguity. If no one knows whose team it is, if Trey thinks it's his team, if Dybantsa thinks it's his team, if Davis thinks his presence makes it his team, then the practices are tense, the chemistry is fragile, and the game-time decision-making becomes fractured. Washington needs to decide, clearly and internally if not publicly, what the hierarchy is, and then they need to stick to it. The case for making it Dybantsa's team from day one is actually stronger than it might appear. He's the no-one pick. He's the $69 million investment. He's the 19-year-old who led the nation in scoring. And if the goal is to build something sustainable, something that's still competing in 2030 and 2031, then the player to build it around isn't the 28-year-old guard or the 33-year-old big man. It's the teenager who's still getting better every week. Young and Davis were brought in to accelerate a process, not to be the process. It's a roster built to compete in the Eastern Conference playoffs next season, and adding Dybantsa only strengthens the case for a deep run through the East in year one. That's the organizational vision, and it implicitly subordinates the veterans to the goal. The goal isn't have Trae Young be great in Washington. The goal is get to the Eastern Conference playoffs and make a deep run. Dybantsa is described as the piece that strengthens the case, not the piece that is the case. The distinction is subtle, but it matters. The risk of making it Dybantsa's team too quickly is real. He's 19. The NBA is faster, more physical, and more complex than anything he experienced at BYU. The defensive responsibilities, the scheme complexity, the road game environments, the back-to-back fatigue. All of those things hit rookies hard, no matter how gifted they are. Even the best no-one picks in history needed time to find their footing. A coaching staff that throws Dybantsa into the deep end and calls it his team on day one might actually be setting him up to sink rather than swim. The ideal scenario, and it's not an impossible one, is that Young and Davis mentored Dybantsa through his first season, while allowing his talent to organically take over more of the offensive load as the season progresses. Think about what that looks like. Trae runs the offense in the first quarter, getting Dybantsa easy catch and score opportunities, building his confidence, letting him get accustomed to the speed of the NBA game. By January, Dybantsa is starting to initiate actions himself. By March, the coaching staff is drawing up plays specifically for him in clutch moments. By the playoffs, if they get there, he's the co-star, not the apprentice. That kind of managed development requires patience from everyone involved. From Dybantsa, who has to accept a degree of subordination that he's never experienced anywhere he's played. From Trae, who has to genuinely want his teammate to succeed, rather than seeing him as competition for touches. From Davis, who has to stay engaged and healthy enough to matter. From the coaching staff, who has to be honest with themselves about when the transition should happen, and not let veteran politics delay it past the right moment. According to reports, Dybantsa said he wanted to do whatever was needed, learn from Young and Davis, and fit in alongside Washington's several young wings. Washington's management has already emphasized defense for the new franchise pick. The messaging is correct. The emphasis on defense is smart, because defense is where Dybantsa can contribute meaningfully from day one, without stepping on anyone's offensive toes. If he becomes the team's premier perimeter defender in year one, he's valuable regardless of his offensive load. And that defensive reputation, once established, buys him the credibility to demand more offensive responsibility as the season progresses. The June day when Trae Young welcomed Dybantsa to Washington was, on the surface, a feel-good moment. The Washington Star welcomed the no one pick to the nation's capital and appeared to tease a future conversation about jersey numbers. Jersey numbers, a public social media interaction. On one level, it's just two basketball players acknowledging each other online. But read it as a subtext, and it's more interesting. It's a veteran signaling that he's aware of the new arrival, that he's watched him enough to know his jersey preference, and that the two of them are going to have to figure some things out. The playful tone is good. The underlying question, who gets no 3, is real. Dybantsa wore number 3 during his lone season at BYU and throughout high school. That jersey would seemingly be a natural choice in the league for him. But Young, an 8-year NBA veteran, has the final say. The final say, that's not a phrase that sits comfortably in the same sentence as no one pick and franchise centerpiece. And it's a preview of the dynamic that's going to play out in more consequential ways throughout the season. Young is the veteran. Young has seniority. Young has the contract. And in NBA locker rooms, that hierarchy is real, even when it isn't stated explicitly. How Dybantsa navigates that dynamic will reveal a great deal about his character. We already know he can score. We already know he can carry a team. What we don't know yet is how he handles deference, how he responds when the ball goes somewhere else. In the fourth quarter, when the play call isn't for him, when the veteran gets the credit for a win his talent helped produce, that's the quieter test, the one the cameras don't always capture. And how he handles it will shape the internal culture of a locker room that desperately needs cohesion. Washington's front office has an obligation that extends beyond this season. They have to think about the cap implications of a roster this crowded with veteran contracts and understand that Dybantsa's max extension, the one that comes after his rookie deal, is going to cost them significantly more. Davis is eligible to sign a 4-year extension. If Davis signs that extension, Washington's payroll could become genuinely prohibitive by the time Dybantsa is in his 3rd or 4th year, precisely the years when he'll need the organization to be able to surround him with the right pieces to compete at the highest level. The front office that built this roster deserves credit for boldness. The Wizards have stacked up as many draft assets as possible since President Michael Winger and General Manager Will Dawkins took over in 2023, acquiring 5 players in the first round over the last 2 summers. That's a foundation of young talent. That's capital. And capital in the NBA can be converted into championship infrastructure if used wisely. The question is whether Winger and Dawkins, who have been in their roles for just 3 years, have the experience and the vision to convert all those assets into a team that actually wins when it matters. The Trae Young signing is the decision that will most clearly define their tenure. Young signed a 4-year, $212 million extension with the franchise on the eve of the draft. If Young thrives in Washington, if he and Dybantsa develop a genuine 2-star dynamic, if the team reaches the playoffs and competes, if Young provides the veteran presence that accelerates the rookie's development, then the signing is a masterstroke. It brought a generational playmaker to a roster that desperately needed one and gave the franchise's most important asset the best possible mentorship environment. But if Young's health declines, or if the 2-star dynamic creates more friction than chemistry, or if the $212 million ties Washington's hands at exactly the wrong moment, then the signing is the albatross that drags down an otherwise promising rebuild. The international dimension of Dybantsa's background adds a layer to the story that rarely gets discussed. He said, "Education is very important to me, and we're helping raise money to send kids to schools and universities. My mom is from Jamaica, and my dad is from the Congo, so helping kids here in the States and over in the Congo." This is a player who already at 19 is thinking about his legacy beyond basketball, who sees his platform as a tool for something bigger than his own stardom, who connects his success to the uplift of communities in Brockton, in Jamaica, in the Congo, that don't often produce no one NBA picks. That kind of identity, rooted in family, in community, in something larger than the game, is actually the most important factor in long-term NBA success that no scouting report captures. Players who know why they're playing, who have a clear sense of purpose beyond individual stats, tend to navigate adversity better. They don't need the external validation of a max contract, or a starting role, or the right jersey number. Their fuel is internal, and internal fuel burns longer and hotter than external motivation. In an assembly in his hometown, Dybantsa announced he was declaring for the NBA draft, but also finishing his degree online at BYU. He's finishing his degree while becoming the #1 pick in the NBA draft. He's not letting success become an excuse to stop growing in every direction. That's not the profile of a player who is going to let a complicated roster situation derail him. That's the profile of a player who is going to find a way, through the noise, through the crowding, through the political dynamics of an NBA locker room, to become exactly what he said he'd become. The fans in Washington need a specific kind of patience that DC basketball culture has historically struggled to maintain. They've been burned before. John Wall looked like the answer. He wasn't enough. Bradley Beal looked like the answer. He wasn't enough in Washington's environment. The franchise has burned through talented players without creating the winning culture that maximizes them. And the fan base has responded with a combination of resignation and intense, almost desperate hope. A hope that makes every setback feel like a betrayal. Dybantsa is going to have setbacks. Not because he's not talented enough, because every 19-year-old in the history of basketball has had setbacks in their first NBA season. He's going to get scored on by a veteran guard who's been in the league for 10 years. He's going to miss a crucial free throw. He's going to have a game in January where his shot isn't falling and the crowd is quiet and the commentary is unkind. That's the NBA. That's what happens to everyone, regardless of the size of their reputation. The Wizards fan base's response to those moments will matter, because players feel the energy of their home building. Players feed off the crowd when things are going well and feel the weight of silence or hostility when things aren't. I just know they're super hungry, Dybantsa said of DC's love for basketball. Hungry is good when it produces energy. Hungry becomes dangerous when it becomes impatient. Getting that balance right requires a coaching genius or a stroke of luck, or both. And Washington doesn't have a long history of coaching stability or brilliance to draw on. The franchise has cycled through coaches the way other teams cycle through backup point guards, frequently, expensively, without the kind of continuity that produces development. If the organization doesn't give the coaching staff the time and support to actually build something, if Dybantsa's first season is bumpy and the front office's response is to change the coach rather than stay the course, then the whole project risks collapsing before it ever truly begins. Being the #1 pick, it meant a lot to me, he said. Obviously, me being #1 throughout all my high school career, I definitely wanted to be the #1 pick and be in the same conversation with LeBron James, Cooper Flagg, Allen Iverson, guys like that. He named LeBron, he named Flagg, he named Allen Iverson, a player who never had the right pieces around him in Philadelphia, but was so extraordinary that he dragged that team to the finals on pure force of will. Whether Dybantsa is alluding to that parallel consciously or not, the comparison is sitting right there. Iverson's Philadelphia, like Dybantsa's Washington, was never the right construction to maximize his talent. It just happened to have a player special enough to transcend the construction anyway. Here's what the basketball world knows for certain, heading into the 2026-27 season. Anicet Dybantsa Jr., AJ to everyone who knows him, is the most talented teenager to enter the Washington Wizards franchise in this century. He is prepared, driven, historically productive at every level he's competed at, and surrounded by a family infrastructure that has poured everything into this moment. He is, by every available measure, the right player. Whether Washington is the right place, that's the question that's going to take years to answer. His future NBA career remains a mystery for the moment. That sentence from a BYU publication written the night of the draft is more honest than most of the hot takes that followed. The mystery isn't about his talent. It's about what happens when that talent meets the specific, complicated, historically underperforming organization that holds his rights. The mystery is organizational, not individual. And yet, and this is the thing that keeps the story alive, mystery is not the same as doubt. Mystery is open space. Mystery means the story isn't written yet. And in that open space, there is room for something unexpected. For a year-one performance that silences everyone. For a coaching staff that gets the rotation right. For Trae Young to be the mentor he's capable of being. For Anthony Davis to stay healthy enough to give Dybantsa the interior presence. that opens the floor for his mid-range game. There is room for Washington after 45 years of near miss and broken promise to finally get it right. The last image of draft night is the one worth sitting with. When his name was called by NBA Commissioner Adam Silver, AJ going with Anicet Dybantsa Jr. to honor his father. It was a larger-than-life moment shared with all of Cougar Nation. His father's name ringing out across the Barclays Center. A Congolese immigrant's name announced in a moment of American professional sports' highest celebration. 3 continents converging in a single syllable. After the Wizards' hat went on, after the hugs with his family, after the media circuit in Brooklyn, Dybantsa said the thing that will define his career if he's right about himself. The top pick in the draft was going to celebrate for one night and then get back in the gym Wednesday. "I know I have a lot of work to do," Dybantsa said. "Obviously, this night is just a celebration of all the hard work I've done in the past. And so now I'm going to celebrate. One night." He gave himself one night. Then he was back to work, back in the gym, back to the process that got him here. That's who he is. That's the player Washington just drafted. Not a player who needs the perfect situation to thrive, though the perfect situation would certainly help. A player who has never once in his entire life waited for the situation to get better. A player who has always made the situation better by the force of his own preparation, his own character, his own refusal to accept anything less than first. The Wizards have their cornerstone. The path is complicated. The potential is extraordinary. And the name on the back of that Washington jersey, the full name, the real name, the one he's going to wear in honor of his father, means undefeated. So watch what happens next.